Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the United Adventure Company. A little different game tonight. We're still playing Delta Green, but it's not Impossible Landscapes. We had a player out, so we picked a one-shot to play tonight. Uh, Nathan is doing the handling of the agents tonight, so as usual, we really appreciate you stepping up last minute to jump this one in. We also have Jesse, who's going to be playing with us tonight. So sit back and enjoy. I'm told that you can maybe play along at home with a pencil and paper. So if you'd like
See
to
if you can
try
figure
your
this one out.
investigative skills and join the agents, play along at home with a pen and paper. Um, so
Be
glad that
sure to
everyone
yell
can
at the screen. Yeah.
just yell really loud. Don't put spoilers in the chat, please. No spoilers. Um, so glad that you all could be here tonight to join us. And let's see. I guess let's jump into it. Nathan, why don't you start us off and take us away?
All right. So for this one, we jump a little bit right into the action. We see the four agents entering the Coxeter Museum. As they pass past the reception, let's kind of give an idea of what each of these agents is named and looks like. We'll start with the top left for me, Agent Tharp.
All right. My name is Celeste Tharp. I am an attorney, so I'm in business suit, power business suit. I'm from Gaylord, Michigan, and enjoy helping get others what is due. And my current goal is to make the top 60 under 60 on Business Insiders.
Is she approaching the 60 under 60? Did she
Um,
try for the 50 under 50 but couldn't make that? And
yeah, we missed that by a couple of years, so we're going for the next one. Still, yeah.
okay.
Oh, and she's very crafty.
Uh,
Very
just
crafty.
making a note of 60 under 60. All right. Agent Corwin.
All right, so I am Amy Corwin. I am a middle aged, overweight white woman who is an FBI agent, and she's kind of frumpy. Um, she doesn't take very good care of herself, and her hair is all like barely brushed, and she just kind of has like a wild look about her.
Great. Great. Uh, Agent Joshua returning. What's Agent Joshua look like?
Well, Joshua is nondescript, average height, average build. He has the typical government agent haircut. He works for the FBI. Charcoal suit, um, overcoat when it's cold, shiny shoes, sunglasses when needed.
His trusty Zippo.
Yes, that's in his pocket.
Oh, he's not flicking it back and forth.
Smart, smart.
No.
And last, Agent Chaz.
Chaz has real bro energy as he comes through the door. He wears jeans that are sit low on his hips and wearing a A-frame white undershirt that he clearly only put on because you can't walk around without a shirt on. He's rocking some flip-flops and a messenger bag, like he wears it across his crossbody, basically a man purse. And yeah, just real chill energy, which is good because his day job is working at a cash only opiate slash methadone clinic, um, where he works as a nurse and is an administrator as well as mixer of medications with his unusually high and proficiency with pharmaceuticals of all varieties.
All right. So a bit of a mixed group entering the art gallery today. Um, as background, you were all contacted a bit more on this beautiful sunny day to follow up with the owner of the Coxeter Museum, a Noah Moss. He is the the Delta Green agency would like to chat with him about some missing art pieces. So they sent the four of you in to go have a nice little chat, get a hold of him, and bring him out. Upon entering the building, you didn't see anyone in the reception area, but it's not that large of an area, and you pretty quickly decide to head into the gallery.
What did you say his name was? Did you say
Uh,
Nobert?
Noah.
Noah
Moss.
Moss.
Noah.
Got it.
That may be a
Noah
little bit of
Moss.
the old accent.
As in like no moss, as in like no more.
Mhm.
Okay.
That's right.
And,
Yeah.
and what
That
is
doesn't
that?
mean anything. Don't worry about
Okay. I just won't write that down.
it.
And Joshua is very goal oriented. So what is our objective?
The objective is to get a hold of Noah Moss and bring him in. They're not expecting a fight or anything. When you got kind of his the folder describing him, he's like an 80-year-old man
And if we
or guy. You
Like-
you think you'll just be able to jump in and grab him. They have no real worries about him being hostile.
and is he a threat? Like if we can't get him, should we eliminate him?
No.
Okay.
No, they want him for questioning, and that is about it. So he
Alright.
would need to be alive.
So absolutely alive. All right.
Yes.
Agent Tharp will stroll into the art gallery, her high heels clicking hard against the tiled ceramic or polished concrete floor, kind of echoing intentionally, trying to get attention of anyone who may be in and around, and so able to recognize her mark.
Yeah, and you stride ahead of the party a little bit as they walk into this room, and you all see this large gallery opening. It's rectangular, north to south. It's taller that way, if that makes sense. And then east and west, you can additionally see some archways. It looks like they're all identical. Around the walls, you see there are a number of portraits hung up, large portraits that all show a large landscape paintings of a city in the midst of a riot. It looks like you can see torches here and there. There's violence in very fine detail down on the bottom. You can see their robed figures fleeing and fighting in the street. Does anybody have art or history?
History.
A little bit of
Okay.
history.
Yeah,
Base.
what's your history at there, you two?
Base.
30?
Yeah, I'm at base.
You
Plus 2.
yeah, then Agent Joshua, you would identify these pictures as being a 19th century kind of thing, but you can't place the city. The architecture looks kind of neoclassical but medieval, and has little embellishments of Mesoamerican background. So it's a very strange combination in these cityscapes that you're looking at. In the center of this gallery that has kind of that nice marble floor, there is a plain wooden bench with leather cushioning sitting there that you could sit on and look at all these walls. In total, there are 8 paintings total. Additionally, and this is the last little bit, in the northwest, in the southeast, you see there are spiral staircases. The one in the west goes up, and the other one goes down to, you presume, a basement gallery. But other than that, there's just kind of the dim lights of the gallery are on. You can see the paintings themselves are highlighted, but beyond that, it is echoing back the sound of the heels clicking across the floor.
Nice.
There's no one else in the museum right now.
You don't see anyone, no.
Should
perhaps
there
we
be?
should attempt to find a information desk or something.
Okay. You kind of think of that. Yeah, I was hoping to see the owner, and you turn around, and when you look back the way you came, you look through the archway that you passed through to get into the gallery, and you see the gallery again roughly through there. It appears to be dark, but almost an exact copy of where you are standing now, just not the reception desk anymore.
Oh no, not again. Anyone else or my companions around, or is it just me?
It's all
still hear
four
the-
of you. Yep.
The clicky clacky
Yep.
of the high heels.
Does this seem like a time of day / place where there should be more people around than what we're seeing? Is this unusual?
No, you guys got here a little early in the day.
Okay.
All right,
And
so
it was a
I'm
beautiful day. Beautiful day outside, so who wants to go to a museum on a beautiful day?
Right.
I would, but anyway, so I'm understanding it correctly. Like the environment just shifted, right?
Yeah, you
Like,
walked
this
through,
is-
and when you look
yeah.
back, it's not where you came from.
I'm just gonna walk that way, then, and kind of say out loud. I'm assuming that we all kind of are experiencing this together. It's probably one of these museum hoax things where they shift the environment using some sort of video projection. They do these like painting things where they just project them in 3D. It's probably just something like that.
Oh, bruh. Like reality TV shows.
Yes, something like that.
Paz looks for the hidden cameras.
I'm
He's
not so
intentionally
sure.
looking for cameras, any sort of surveillance equipment, anything like that. Microphones.
Yeah, roll a search.
All right.
I'm
How is Chaz at searching?
We're gonna say Chaz probably smokes a lot of weed, like even now.
No way, bro.
Like maybe,
Joshua always gets
maybe
stuck
he's a
with
little
these
high.
people.
yeah, like it might be. Well, no, he might be palming a joint right now with a search like that.
Dude,
I would like-
the ceiling.
So we'll say you at a 100, you know what? There might be a camera way up in the corner, you think, but you'd have to.
Hyper-focused.
Yeah, you'd have to like. You're not quite sure how you'd get up there because these are like the double tall places, and yeah, not quite sure.
I'm gonna rifle around on the information desk
Or
or
there is
reception
not-
mask.
Right.
There's not one.
The
No.
reception desk, you turn around and you see what Joshua did is now behind you, instead of the opening area, there is just a duplicate of the gallery you're in. But again, the gateway, archway, whatever you want to call it, to the front, you're kind of getting close and looking. It's difficult to see through. You can tell it's a copy of the room, but it almost shimmers and it's kind of dark looking at it.
I wanna
maybe
check
like
my
it's a
phone.
mirror?
I want to check
Um,
my phone. Do we have a connection?
You don't have a connection, but you do have a new text message.
All right.
And you open the text message. It's from an hour ago, and it reads Bestow.
Check your phones. See if you have any messages.
I checked my phone.
Fine.
Yep. All of you have the same text message that reads Bestow.
But no others, just that one.
I mean, whatever you had prior, but yes, that one is
I'm
new,
just-
but it's weird because it is dated an hour ago, but you don't remember seeing it. Like you check your phones often enough, you would notice, but
I'll text back. Who dis? Question mark.
I don't think you'll get anything, Agent.
yeah, you get the cannot deliver message on the phone. Looks like your connection is not
Yeah,
not
sure.
existent.
Concrete
You
building.
got that IV server connect error.
Yes,
Yeah.
that was a foreboding message from OBS earlier. I'll just stupid. That's probably some random ad agency. Let's call list. So this shimmering, it kind of looks like a mirror almost, but we can't see our own
more just like a
reflections in
little
it?
bit of a haze. Yeah, you don't see a reflection. It looks like if you were to go through the south, for example, you would it's like you're looking from the north end of the room, like it's a loop.
I want to go to one of the other archways, the east and west. We'll go east and see. Does that have kind of the same effect?
It does indeed. You can see in either direction you look, and including if you don't forget, you have the stairwells as well, a little metal spiral staircase. Looking up, you see there is steps up and down to another floor, but it also kind of has that same haze once you hit the ceiling or floor, respectively.
Damn.
I think we're.
So while Chaz is hyperfixating on this security camera, he looks around. Does he see? Are there any doors where there might be like a maintenance closet or anything?
No, there is not.
All right,
Even
well,
with
maybe-
a 100, you can tell there are no extra doors. This is a pure gallery space.
All right, well then probably need to go check the basement because he figures that is where they would have maintenance supplies.
Okay.
He's looking for a broom or a mop or anything like that. And so he would just go toward that southwest corner and descend the stairs.
Guys, I don't
Okay.
think we should separate.
Okay, I'm just going for a mop. You can come get a mop too. And he just kind of keeps bebopping.
That's not a good idea. What if you get down there and you get dislocated from where we're at?
It's probably just some effect. I'll go with you.
This is no effect.
It's
We
probably
should not
just-
get separated.
Well,
I would agree with this agent here. I think perhaps we should all stay together.
I have seen some stuff. Trust me.
Are we gonna stay here or are we gonna go somewhere? Because this is just can't stand around here. I have clients.
Y'all just gonna stare
Just-
at archways? Is that what we're doing?
I'm ready to
No.
go do something. I
I'm
have
going
to
to
go back.
stare at this painting. I want to go back to that painting.
Okay.
And I want to see if I can use anthropology. It said there was some Mesoamerican stuff in there. Is there anything that I could recognize as anything that would stand out to me that could?
Sure. Yeah.
Looking for
what's your
clues.
rating in that? Yeah.
My anthropology is 40.
Okay. That is enough. As you're looking, we'll say you get up to one and it's you see the placard because you're right up next to it. You see it's just simply titled landscape number 3. And you look around and yeah, you're guessing that's landscape 1, 2, 3, just goes around to 8. And your score is high enough that you know this is nothing constructed. Like this must be a made up place.
Is there anything in this room other than the paintings?
The bench, the paintings, and then the archways and stairs. It's kind of the
Okay.
core. Yep.
I'm gonna walk over. Is the bench bolted down or can I pick it up?
You can you kind of hoist at it, and it you feel like there's a little give to it. You think it's fairly heavy, but you might be able to flip it over if you wanted.
I want to throw it through the archway.
Okay.
I want to slow him down when he starts to pick it up and be like, "Oh man, that's exactly what we need," and starts dragging it over to the corner. I'm going to use it as a ladder.
Wait, for what? What's up there?
Bruh, that's them watching us.
What?
That's where the camera is.
And can I roll a search and see if I can see what he's talking about?
Yeah,
Do I
yeah.
need
You're scraping this bench across the ground, and I mean, yeah. Go ahead and roll the search, but
It's a 40 out of a 20, so that's a fail.
okay.
Not good at searching either.
You don't think there's anything up there, but it's kind of a dark corner. Maybe he saw something.
Yeah, that kind of catches my eye. If he's dragging furniture around, and if I hear them say that someone's watching us from the corner, I want to go check that out.
Yeah, and you're able to get this bench over to the corner. Everyone that's going over there, go ahead and roll an alertness.
Oh, and also, if it's dark, I'd like to use my little mag light, my little LED mag light.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's kind of looking around. You can even flash it in the corner.
22. That's a crit pass.
That is a crit pass. All right.
That's a
good.
fail.
I'm still dragging the bench over there.
Yep. Well, that's the thing. You've dragged the bench over. You prop it up against the wall because you're going to have to climb it a little bit. And Agent Corwin, you're watching this. I don't know what your attitude towards it is, but as they're climbing, you realize there's something written on the bottom of the bench. And it is in India ink, carefully scrawled, is the letter T.
That's quite odd. Take a look at this, and I'm gonna nudge Agent Joshua.
All right. What exactly am I looking at now? What am I seeing?
A nicely calligraphied letter T on the bottom of this. Looks like it was done with nice ink.
What is it on the bottom of again?
The
bench.
the bench
bench,
that
okay.
I assume Agent Chaz is now steadying himself.
Oh yeah. Look, didn't even hesitate. Like, bruh, we surf on the weekends. It's whatever.
Is
He's
it?
just climbing up on top.
They let anybody into this organization these days, don't they?
Oh, let me tell you about some of the people I've worked with in the past. You wouldn't believe.
It's the
Major
great,
Chaz,
it's the great
you get up in the
resignation.
corner.
That's what's happening.
You get up in the corner there. Yep, that's a spider. Yeah, there's a little dead spider up in the corner.
Chaz is gonna take the spider.
All right.
Climb down.
Yep, it's a daddy long legs, but you can see it has actually, yeah, it has all 8 of its legs.
Oh dear. Good heavens, what are you doing there?
Oh, I was thinking about eating it. No, I'm gonna go get rid of it, just in case. And Chaz walks over to like anything that might be heavy. Like if there's a plant, is there a plant maybe or a pot?
No, it's
No?
just a gallery. There's the paintings.
He'll walk over to a painting and he will shove it, like crush it behind the painting.
All right. Yeah, and it gives that little kind of dry crack that old spiders have.
Or microchips as they break.
All right, we can't see the entranceway anymore.
You can see the archway, but beyond it is just the replication, right?
I would like to take a better look at that.
Okay. Yeah, kind of what the other agents saw is you get close and you can see through it. Once you get close, there's kind of almost a dark haze that makes it difficult to see through. But as you look out, either the north exit, you can see, it'd be like I'm coming in the south side of this room. Kind of Pac-Man rules style, if you want to think of it that way.
What's
All
the
right.
painting? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But Joshua, if you know, he always just got his kid gloves on, right? His little black gloves. He's going to. Oh, I want to flip a quarter into the haze.
Okay. Yep. You flip it into. Which one are you throwing it into? Which doorway?
Dealer's choice. Go ahead. This one, right one.
The right one. All right. Then you will shoot it out. You chuck it to the east side of the room, and you roll a luck because you give it a good boost. You know, roll a luck.
I can't never find luck on here. Where's
It's a
50-50.
50-50.
50-50.
74?
Okay. You hear it clatters across marble, but you don't hear anything beyond that. Sounds like if you dropped it in this room.
Is there anything to see on the archway itself, or does it
Yeah,
have like a
good question.
border or anything like that?
It doesn't. It's kind of a granite. It feels like little patterns in it, very carefully carved, but none that really say anything to you.
Does anybody have paper and maybe a pencil on them? I'd like to get a rubbing of this if we do. I do not, unfortunately.
Come on, Joshua's got the leather pad, man. He pulls it out, rips off the. Just give it. No, there's notes on that pad here. Just and that nice like $80 pen from some office supply store.
Yeah, and you scratch on it, and you do get a better kind of relief of these carvings on it. Does anybody have any occult knowledge?
Joshua does.
Just base.
Just base?
33.
Or unnatural? Any unnatural?
If I can get my
probably
character
not
sheet
that,
to
yeah.
cooperate, then
Yeah. What's your
nah, I'm
occult
just at
there,
base.
Joshua?
33.
33. Go ahead and roll it. Let's see what we got.
I'm not assuming a critical fact.
All right. You're not sure. You kind of have a gut feeling that there's something about this, but you'd have to spend a bit more time. You think you'd almost have to like sit down for a day and really like work out what this all means.
Is it an image or is it words? Does it look like a language?
Maybe not one you know.
So not Latin?
Not Latin, no.
Okay.
So for the record, I've failed every roll I've made so far.
That means you're
Me
due.
too. Oh no, I passed one. That's right. So the painting I'm standing at that I shoved the spider behind.
Yep.
What is it a painting of?
You kind of take a step back and you look at it, and this one appears to be the beach near the city that's on fire. You can see there are people in robes fleeing into the water as they are being chased by people with knives, and there's violence at the edge of them that you can see, but it kind of scopes out and you see more of these buildings and architecture and whatnot. It's got incredible detail, but also incredible scope. These are large pictures.
When Joshua tossed the quarter, did I hear it bounce as
Yeah.
well in this room?
Yeah.
Did I think it
not
was in
this
this room?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
So yeah, can we see? If I walk over there, can I see the quarter in the other room?
It kind of gets lost in that haze a little bit.
All right, we're gonna need something bigger. One of you guys throw this bench over there and let's see what happens. I can't pick it up; it's too heavy.
Oh, I can pick that up. No problem.
Really? Wow. Agent
Yes. I don't tell anybody, but I have a black belt in Taekwondo.
That's
Joshua makes a
impressive.
note of that in his notebook. I won't tell anyone.
And you wouldn't You wouldn't know it by looking at her because she's like really overweight, but she's all muscle underneath the overweightness. So,
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Chaz
All right.
smokes
And
weed
yeah,
harder.
you can pull that. Yeah, Chaz lights up a little bit. Yeah,
Why does
Agent
it smell
Corwin,
like
you pull
someone
this
set a skunk's
bench.
ass on fire? Oh, for Christ's sake!
Yeah, it's a pretty big gallery. It's got some airspace, so it doesn't like immediately swarm you, but you're starting to get a hit of it. What are you doing with this particular bench as you drag it across the floor?
I am going to do my best to pick it up and chuck it through this doorway.
Oh,
All
and
right,
before
make
you
a
throw it,
strength
see if
check.
there's a letter under it as well.
It's the letter
It's the same
T.
bench.
It's the same bench.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
I
same
got
bench.
it, shove it.
Ooh, that is a crit pass. The dice like me tonight. 33.
All right. All right. You are able to kind of almost shot put this through the archway. You give actually a decent spin, and you get some distance on it. And what you hear is because you're throwing it out the east door, you heave it, and it makes it a good way in the room. You hear it crack as it hits the ground and skid. You hear some pieces fly off, it sounds like, and then very faintly there is a small splash. But you kind of hear the bits of the wood settle down after a moment, like they just rested onto the floor.
Faint splash. Did you hear that as well?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I don't remember there being a fountain in that room.
Hmm.
Well, Chaz, perhaps there's a mop room in there.
I already got the bug.
But dear heavens, don't you know that if there's one bug, there's usually more than one bug?
That is true, man. All right. I'll go look. And so Chaz is going to go that way.
Oh,
Right.
good heavens.
So Chaz
He
heads
should
out
be
the
leaving
east.
a nice trail for us to follow.
There is a certain aroma at this point that does follow Chaz, and yeah, he's feeling good. Chaz walking into the out the east door, you find yourself in a room that appears to be a duplicate of the gallery, except in the center of the room there is there's no bench. Instead, there is a large circular stone fountain. It looks like it's about 2 feet deep and about 8 feet in diameter, filled with cloudy, opaque water. And you can see as you walk in the room that the bench that Agent Corwin just heaved into the room is broken on the ground, and some pieces of it have landed in the fountain and just spread across the floor.
Is the fountain a circle?
It is a circle, yes.
I'm going to try and call back to the others. It's cool, man. It's the O.
Well,
It's-
and you shout back, and the others can hear you, but once you take a couple steps in, it's difficult to see you anymore. You kind of get lost in that doorway fuzz.
Are there
Wait.
pictures? Same pictures in this room?
Yep, same pictures.
Same ones? Okay.
Yep.
Can we still smell his fine aroma?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, it'll fade after a while, you think, but it's pretty potent.
Medicinal grade aeroponic. Prime Kush.
Nice.
Smells no better than common ditchweed. Skunk weed, if you will.
If he says it's safe, I'll step through. I will go
That's
back that way.
harsh.
I'm gonna follow in. I'm coming in, Chaz. I got you.
Yeah, and you find yourself in the kind of the same fountain gallery that you see before you. Looking out the other archways, you see, and even looking back, kind of that same fuzz that you saw before.
Can I make it? I'm gonna take a few steps in, then turn around and look back, and can I see their silhouettes or their full bodies, or is it?
If they kind of get up close, you can see a little bit, but that's about it. As soon as they step back, it kind of dissipates, almost like a magic eye puzzle.
Can you see my light? And I'll flash my flashlight in there.
Same situation. If you're close to the door, you can
Right.
see kind of the diffused light hitting that, but you take a few steps back, you just get lost. You don't even see your reflection anymore.
I'm gonna reach into
your
the
image.
water of the
Okay.
fountain and feel around, see what's in there.
Go ahead and make a search check.
Oof.
Harp, are you able to come back across?
As you're hearing
Um,
this kind of splashing around as Chaz is
I don't know. Chaz
leaning
is
into
going
it.
into the fountain. I don't know if I should yet. Let's see what happens to him.
Yeah, and Chaz, you reach into this cloudy water and you're feeling around on the ground. It kind of almost has this weird suction to it, and the base of this has kind of a smooth quality to it, and you faintly feel a little divot kind of at the tip of your fingers, and before you can explore it, you feel this painful bite into your arm. Go ahead and roll a d4. Four. This thing, whatever it is under the water, got a damn good grip on you.
Good, because I'm gonna pull it out.
All right, yeah, easy to do. You pull it out, and you see about a foot-long eel that you have pulled out that is thrashing on your arm over the pool, and it is slapping against you. Go ahead and make a sanity check for looking at this, as you know water. Take a sanities. You realize this eel does not exist on Earth. You can actually see into it a little bit. It's a little translucent and very alien to your senses.
I see.
Gnarly, and like he just starts hitting it against the fountain. Like he'll grab onto it so it can't get away, and then just starts beating it against the fountain.
Having been having this conversation, my back is turned, and so I hear him making this noise, and I'll turn around and see what I see. And while I am crafty and friendly, I am also very, very squicky about slithery, slimy, snaky, swirly things. So I will scream, "It's got him!" No! And just kind of freaking out.
Roll
I
a
guess-
sanity. That's a good time to do that.
Yeah, that's a pass, but
Do we hear all this in the other room? Because
Yes.
Agent Joshua and I are still okay.
You
If
sure
I
do.
start hearing this, I'm rushing in there. So I'm
Corn,
rushing in
corn.
there.
and I'm just standing there pointing like, "It's got him! It's got him! He ran the fountain! It's got him!" Like, and then at the same time, like pointing and trying to fumble for my gun, and like, I'm just no, not having any of this thing.
If
It
Corn
doesn't-
runs in, Joshua will go into, but he's not gonna
Okay.
run in. He's just gonna like shake his head like, I can't believe I'm doing this.
Right.
It's-
Yeah.
Step in like he's taking that leap of faith on it. Yeah, Charles like
Yeah, and you kind of expect like something, but you just walk through. It feels as normal as walking to the next room, and you see Agent Chaz beating this eel that had latched onto his arm against the edge of this tub. With it out of the water and how well it latched, it doesn't last long. You get a few good cracks, and then you can. It's still attached to you, but it's very clearly dead.
And just pinch behind its jaw, push and unhinge it and take it off my arm. It was 4. That was a 4. I'm betting I'm bleeding pretty good.
You're bleeding pretty good.
Is it dead? Is it dead?
Yeah. Whoa, that's
Okay.
gnarly.
I'll
Shit.
come over there and look. Let me see it. Let me see it. And
What
I'll take a
is
look at his
this
arm.
thing?
Yeah, let's have a look.
He'll throw it at Corwin when she says, "What is this thing?"
Oh,
Like, throw
good
it to her.
heavens.
Like, here. Like, he tosses it. Like, here.
I'm gonna go to catch it, but I'm also, good heavens, son.
Go ahead, and both of you, as you see this strange alien eel, roll a 0-1 sanity test.
And I will.
What is 0 1?
Oh,
0 if you succeed, 1 if you fail.
I rolled a 61. My sanity is 60.
All right. Well,
Yeah, so
Now it's
that's a fail.
59.
Now it's
Now
it's
59.
59.
I got a 12.
It's just one of those where it's like,
then
really?
you're good.
1 point off.
Go ahead
Okay.
and roll a first aid for Chaz as I look at his arm, and he's bleeding pretty good. He's got some
Mhm.
weird. Can I tell anything about the teeth marks though? As I'm kind of rolling him up with a failure on
Yeah.
my first aid roll.
Yeah, you're looking at it, and maybe the reason that the failure is there is you realize this thing. Part of the reason it did so much damage is its teeth are serrated.
Ooh.
So yeah, it's pretty nasty.
I don't know if I can do anything with this here. You might need to go see a doctor.
Doctor was going to give Corwin a pair of latex gloves from his pouch. Even though she's holding it, he's going to give it to her anyway.
And after I get a good look at it, I'm like, I'm not a biologist, so I'm just gonna drop it.
And it kind of splats against the stone ground.
Does it
The
remind me of
gunk.
anything out of any kind of mythology or something I can pick up from
No,
anthropology or
this
occult?
Yeah, nothing you've seen kind of prepares you for this weird, semi-translucent, serrated teethed weird eel. But looking around, you can see there's a little bit of a red tinge now to the water in the pool. But you're not seeing other movement therein.
I want to grab the eel. I want to walk over and pick it up by its tail.
Okay.
And I'm assuming where it was bludgeoned to death on the side of the fountain, it's probably got a pretty good sized wound there. And
Yeah.
almost like fishing, I'm just going to kind of dip part of it into the water and hold on to see what I feel.
You not learn the first time, Chaz?
Oh, my hand is,
No,
I'm
this
holding on
is-
to the tail,
This is
I would-
actually.
right? Water, me holding it, right? So it's
Yeah.
just the part that's beaten and bloody that's hanging down in there.
It's quite a good idea, actually.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
No, it's not. I've seen this movie.
So you hold it into the water. You're doing the whole like, I'm ready to jump. And
Yeah,
you give it enough time where you're like, okay, if something was gonna get it, it would have got it, because this is easy. You can kind of sound with it too. You can almost push it in and see when you meet pressure. You do realize, yeah, this fountain, your initial estimate about 2 feet deep, seems to be standard around the place.
Are there more benches or furniture in here?
No, the fountain replaced the bench.
There's
I'm gonna
something. There's something down there, though. I felt something before I got bit. I need your
Ooh.
flashlight.
I'm gonna take a piece of this bench, the broken bench,
Mhm.
and see if I can here, let's jam this down in there. You said there's something in there.
Yeah, I'll shine the light down there.
And just to be clear, when it was there's something in there, he had felt something carved into the wood, or into the stone of the the bottom of the pool.
Gotcha. Okay.
I'll shine the light in there.
It kind of hits that cloudy, a little bit of red from the blood. You can't see it. You think you'd have to get rid of the liquid or feel around like Agent Chaz did,
Yeah.
or be clever. I don't. There's
How
probably
well
another solution.
affixed while they're fishing?
Mhm.
I'm gonna go look at these paintings a little bit more. They look. I don't have anything in art, but they look very similar to the ones in the first room we were in. You said
Identical,
identical.
as far as you can tell. Yep.
How well attached are they?
Whatever the standard would be is, you can pull them out and you can see they are hooked there. But I suspect art galleries probably lock them in some fashion as to an anchor, just so that they don't fall if anybody hits them. But that's all. There's nothing special about it.
Just wondering if I can pull this off the wall. If I can take it down.
Yeah, if you want to do a strength check to unmoor it.
Sure. I'll do a strength check. Strength times 5, right?
Yeah.
Hey, I passed a roll.
Yeah, you get it down. No problem. In fact, you kind of feel that tug as you pull it over, but you have one of these large paintings.
I'll flip it around to the back. Is there like a artist's name or date or anything on the back?
There is not. It is a blank back.
Is it like...
Does the camera on my phone still work?
Yeah.
Well, I imagine this is a waterproof phone, so I will take my coat off, roll my sleeve up. I'll dip the phone into the water, but just not all the way.
Okay.
I'll take a picture, and then when I get the phone back out of the water, I'll adjust the contrast as much as possible to see if I can make out what that is.
Okay. Do you have any computer science or like a photography based thing for that?
Yes, I have computer science of 50.
Okay. Yeah. That is enough. As you push that in, you click, you're messing with the settings a little bit. And as you fiddle with them, you see the very faint outline of an S appear. It appears to have been carved at the bottom of this water, bottom of the basin.
Yes. My suspicion is that each one of these rooms is going to have a letter associated with it.
This is
I
us.
would agree. I want to look around at the outside of this fountain. I just want to take a real close look at the outside of it while they're looking at the... Yeah.
Yeah. You walk around it and you kind of... the design of it matches the rest of the gallery that you initially came in. This does not strike you as kind of out of place, just different. If there wasn't such a weirdness about the doorway, you could almost be convinced you just walked into another part of the gallery that just happened to look very similar in terms of the artwork.
So if we keep going, we're getting an E if we go that way. And he points the direction away from the bench, or the bench room.
Okay, so you're pointing east again.
East. Yeah, pointing east again.
Seems quite likely. Let's go look.
The room we were in had a T, right? Was it T or was it an E? On
E.
the bench?
T.
And Chaz
T.
just goes east.
I'll
As
follow.
Josh was talking, as Joshua starts to talk, Chaz just in his hemp sandals, just, man, motherfucker.
Yeah.
Walking into this room, you see, I think probably the first thing you'd notice is that there is a corpse propped against a corner of the room. Looking at it, it appears to be an adult male in a tattered suit with a hole very clearly in his head, and a pistol in his lap, and there's blood on the wall that he's looking against. Go ahead and roll a sanity for looking at that.
Oh, Lord.
Ooh.
Oh, I failed that one too. All right.
Yeah, roll a d4 as you come across this.
Only one.
Yeah, feeling great.
3.
I made that one.
Also, since I want to make sure, since these rooms are important here, the bench that is in the center of the room is in pieces. It looks like someone just took out all their rage on this bench, and it is just scattered across the floor.
I want to check the corpse to see if it has any like identification on it, or if he has anything else in his pockets that stands out.
Okay, do you have forensics?
30.
30? Okay. Can you roll that?
And what did you say about the bench?
It has been destroyed. It is in pieces.
Okay, I want to go look through all the pieces.
Fail.
Okay. Fail. You think it's a suicide. And looking through it, you do find a wallet of Noah Moss.
Oh, we have found Mr. Moss.
Yeah.
Now, is she in another area that's fogged over, or is this something? that
Yes,
we
they
can see?
walked through into
Okay.
the room to the east of where you are.
Well, really don't like us splitting up, so I'll go in there as well.
Just going to leave Tharp.
No, I'll follow behind.
And Dart left
I'll
us.
see
man.
everybody walking away. Oh, well, I'll put this painting. I'll kind of try to hang it back on the hook best I can and head back that way into the other room.
Just leave it on the ground.
You
Which
passed your
corner?
strength check. You could, yeah.
Which corner was he in?
Northeast. We'll say he's in the northeast corner.
Northeast. Noah. And then the busted bench, and I'm looking through all those pieces as they come through.
So you think as you look through it, it's throughout the room, but you see, like, obviously you came from the other room, you didn't see any pieces there. It looks like it contained itself here. But to put this back together, that would take like a week's worth of work.
I'm not trying to put it together. I'm just trying to look at all the pieces.
Yeah, there's a bench worth of pieces in the room that you could fairly easily tell.
Okay, any of them have like divots where they've been carved on or drawn on?
You do find some pieces, since you had seen the tea prior. You do see some ink on some pieces.
All right, I want to get all those separated and begin putting them together.
That goes down to the time. That would probably take the week's worth of work.
Oh, you're saying it's like in splinters.
Yes, it has been destroyed.
Okay. So we don't know what letter that was. Okay.
I would like to check out the body.
Okay. Do you have forensics as well?
Yes, I have 50.
50. Go ahead and roll that too.
26.
All right. So you both would have known just from kind of this has been here for more than just a day, right? This is a skeletal corpse. Agent Joshua, you think this thing has been here for decades?
Oh, no. And I see Corwin has a wallet.
Yes, Corwin has it. Yeah.
And what's the name? I'll ask her.
Well, it appears that we have found Mr. Noah Moss.
Well, objective complete. I guess it's time to get out of here.
I would tend to agree, but I think it's going to take some time to figure out how to get out of here.
Oh, I know this is terrible, but I want to. Can I pry one of his teeth loose?
Sure.
This is
Yeah.
Joshua.
Yeah, no, it's not that difficult to do.
I'll put it in a little plastic baggie and put it in my coat.
Yeah,
Taz
kinda-
looks over his shoulder at you and reminds you to take one of the molars to make sure there's enough of a root for them to be able to test.
Oh, trust me, he would take the appropriate one.
And,
smart.
About
Yeah,
the
I
time
like it.
that Joshua was in there pulling the tooth out is when I'll come walking through and, oh, gross! Leave the dead man alone. And
For those that hadn't rolled sanity for seeing this, go ahead and do that now as the tooth comes out with kind of a dusty pop. It's been there for a while.
I'm good.
Chaz lights up again.
36.
All right, I failed it.
Roll a d4.
Now, is this one of those I can divert to one of my bonds?
Yes,
or-
yeah, you can roll another d4 once you know your sanity loss and make somebody
Two.
else deal with it. All right, so 2 loss, or you could attempt to push it off onto a bond.
I'm going to shove it off onto my ex-wife.
All right, roll a d4.
Nice.
Alimony this
Love it.
bitch. But
Stuck with
Joshua
it.
loves his ex-wife, so she left him because he's an uptight asshole. All right, 1.
All right, so 1 sand loss, and then lose 1 from the bond and 1 from your willpower. So 1's all around.
Nice. The
In
bench-
general, is it better to push those off onto bonds, or is it taking them? Because I haven't played Delta Green long enough to.
Kind of depends.
depends on if you're
Um,
trying to avoid a breaking point or not.
Right.
Really, that's what it boils down to, in my mind.
Yeah.
Also willpower.
And yeah, and what your willpower is. Yeah. So
So if putting it on a bond, it takes one of your willpower, but if you don't, you get to keep the willpower.
Right. Correct. Yep. You'd keep your bond, you'd keep your willpower, but then you take the full sanity loss, which sometimes you might want to do that too to avoid temporary insanity, which can be a problem.
All right, got it.
yep.
Yeah, and you see, as you're kind of dealing with this body, you see Chaz is starting to collect these bits of the bench in his hand, but it really is, it would be a pain to reconstruct. Possible, but time consuming.
Nah, he's just gonna get a handful of them and gonna go ahead and throw them like up in the air, like LeBron James style, as he walks through the eastern doorway into the next room. He's been taking some sand hits, guys.
Joshua is going to take this pistol. It's better we know where these weapons are than to have them laying around behind us.
Oh, exactly.
Kind
I
of
would agree with
rusty,
you.
but yeah.
Yeah. I want to search this area to see if I can find a. This is another room, right, from the fountain room, correct?
Correct. Yep.
I want to search to see if I can find something that has a letter on it.
You think from what Chaz was doing that the broken bench has a letter.
Oh yeah, I share that. I pointed out. I'm like, it was written on the bench, but now it's destroyed, and we're not putting together splinters to figure out what it was. So this
Okay.
one just gonna be a question mark for now.
All right.
So,
I was
and then-
initially thinking it was the bench that we threw in.
No, that one hit the fountain.
Yeah.
It was in the other room. The fountain stopped it,
Yeah.
and then we came on the other side of the fountain and came through.
Gotcha.
Got a splintered bench, and now Chaz is LeBroning as he walks in to the east.
All right, heads to the east and walks
I'm gonna
into.
follow.
Okay. Is everyone following?
I was actually wanting to walk around.
Okay.
Does this room have staircases in it too?
Yes, they all have the same staircases as well.
Oh, okay.
That was
missing
something I
that.
wanted to. Yeah, I missed that in the
Yes.
fountain room. I wanted to ask that, and I forgot. So
Yes.
so they're
be
they're
clear, everyone
basically
has the 4
identical
exits.
rooms,
Then, yep.
and then
Yep.
staircase up, staircase down. Okay. I want to make sure
Okay.
that they're all that level of identical, because before it was just the paintings are the same. We never clarified.
Right.
Really?
Yep.
Yeah.
Other than that, they are completely identical.
When we left the tea room, did we go south?
Uh-huh.
No,
you
we went east.
East. Okay.
You have been going east every time so far.
Yes, we have. That is correct. By
Indeed.
design.
Yes, I love it.
Hits blunt harder.
Yeah. All right. The group, I assume, Tharp, you are following as well.
Yeah, once I see this room
Yeah,
is
okay.
pretty much the same. Broken bench, dead bodies. The only difference. Oh no! I want to stop and check his body. I want to look at him too, and I want to see if he has the bite marks on him like Chaz does.
Sure. Roll a forensics on him.
Oh, this is gonna go well because I don't
Chaz
have
will
anything
wait.
in forensics.
Chaz will wait. He's not running off.
But hey, I rolled a
If-
20.
Oh, that's pretty good. You don't find any bites on his arm, but you're looking. You see he's got kind of like those old thick socks. Looks like they've been gnawed on a little bit, like maybe by a rodent of some kind.
Okay, so like rats have been chewing on him. Is the skin broken at all, or is it just the socks?
Yeah, there's a couple
ol' rat.
places where it looks like it broke through, but and there's like a little bit of blood. It doesn't look like they got him very well.
So, the little bit of first aid I have looks like superficial. How old do they? Can I tell? Is the
You
blood
had
like dry
passed,
and crusty,
like
or is
Joshua.
it dusty?
This body's been there for decades.
So the blood is
So-
like just flaky and
Yeah.
dusty.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's kind of what I was. All right. Huh. Rats. We haven't seen any rat droppings or anything like
Nope.
that.
No, those would be fairly obvious with
Yeah.
how the rooms are because they've been clean, other than the bench so far. All right, and we will group. Chaz, you're leading the way into the next room. You walk into that room and you get in it. It's a little chilly. You actually kind of feel as you walk through the threshold. You start walking in, it's like, oh, ooh, like you kind of just have that top that's not really there, and you're starting to feel it. In the center of the room, you can see that the bench has been broken up, and it looks like it was used as kindling for a fire.
When he walks in and it's cold and he sees that, he's going to turn around and walk back.
Okay.
Before anyone else really comes through.
Yep.
Is it the same room?
Yes, when you walk back into the room, you find the corpse room.
Everybody else still there?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
About what size is that corpse? About my size?
Sure. Yeah. Human sized. Yeah.
Chaz is going to need that jacket.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And he's going to say, it's, bruh, it is like fucking Alaska in that goddamn room. Let me get them threads. And he's going to reach down and start wrestling the jacket off the body. If it's, I mean, it's been decades, so I'm assuming it kind of breaks off at the joint and he just pulls the arm out.
Yep. Exactly. So.
And he's obviously not comfortable doing that. Like, there's reason why he works where he does. And he's just like,
Yeah. If you would like to roll a sanity, please feel free. But
Yeah,
it'd be just a
I
0
do.
1.
I do
Yeah.
feel free.
Yeah. Maybe a helplessness.
Walk 10 rooms in a dead man's coat.
Ugh.
That was that's one more.
And it doesn't fit amazing. You're really straight in because you're kind of a big guy.
Oh no,
This
no,
guy.
I'm not. Nope.
Oh no, you're not. No, then it
Nope.
fits fine. Yeah.
Nope.
I
I'm not
thought
a
you
big
were
guy.
a surfer big guy. No, you're fine. Then.
He's a stoner guy. So
He's sleek.
he's slanky.
Mm.
Yeah,
He said mini after joint Big Macs.
built for speed. Wouldn't really want to fight Tharp. Would not feel comfortable.
Well, that's saying a lot. She'd probably just throw a high heel at you and call you a heathen. But, all right.
Well, how about we collect our thoughts?
Yes.
What anyone have any ideas, any theories?
At some
If-
point, we have to try going up or down.
Right. But if we keep going until we figure out where the end is, then we know which letters are in which rooms. So we know that we started off in a T and then we wandered into an S. And then we have nothing, and then the next room is more of nothing with what looks like the remnants of a fire. Why they stayed in that cold ass room and built a fire, I don't understand, but they did. So on the other side, there may be something, or we can head north, south, or up, or down, or west. But I think we're still looking for letters.
Yes.
Agreed. We can continue to head that direction if you would like. It's just a walk across a cold room, right? I mean,
I tend to agree. It makes the most sense to continue in a single direction until we figure the order.
All right.
And I'll pull my cell phone out and look at that Bestow text. And just looking at the letters and thinking about the letters that we've gotten. The T. And
And
trying
the
to kind
S.
of make a mental map of directional. Like, does it look like if we are going in a direction, are we spelling a word backwards or forwards, or is it random? And
Depends on if you're facing north or south.
if I need to make an int
Yeah.
check for that or something, I can.
No, for this, you guys are thinking your thoughts. If you need a hint, we can throw an int check. But I think you're on a track.
On a track.
You're on a track.
Might not be
Yeah.
the right one, but it's a track.
Yeah, I'm kind of just making a mental map, and
Yeah.
So this would be E.
Mm.
That would be B.
meaning likely that's the last room.
We can test that theory. We can walk through there and see.
If this would be E, then that would be B, and then west would be the rest of the word.
Yes.
If we're trying to spell this word, we might be wrong about the word we're trying to spell.
I would be surprised if we were wrong on this. I think it's pretty evident.
Right. So, what is the plan then?
Go into the freezer
Yeah.
and see if we can locate a letter B.
Okay.
Before I step through, I want to check my watch and note the time.
Okay. Yeah. It appears to be ticking along normally. Yeah.
And then I'd like to set like a stopwatch on my phone.
Okay.
Just let it run.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, you walk into this next room, and it's not as cold near the doors. Like there's some residual heat there. As you start walking in, it's good you got that jacket on, because as you get closer to the center of the room, it starts to feel colder and colder, and you're getting to the point where your breath is fogging. You're feeling like, yeah, this is well below zero at this point. And you can see as you kind of get close to the fire, there's some charred remains underneath it that are kind of scattered on this wooden stone floor as well, and it's smack dab in the center of the room.
Are there any like handprints or footprints in the ash or anything like that?
Go ahead and well, you're looking through it, and you recognize as you're kind of shivering pawing through. You have a high enough forensics. You find these small animal bones. You realize these are rat bones, scattered, kind of in the remnants of the fire, and you give it a little brush, maybe this cold ash, and you see on the floor, carved beneath the fire, is the letter N.
Maybe it wasn't that.
Chaz is standing where it's warm.
Yeah, right by the doorway. In that case, is
Are the
you can
paintings
see,
on the wall here,
Agent
or
Josh
were
is still-
they what
Yep,
was used to
they're
burn
still
the fire?
Actually, that's true. They probably would have been pulled down as well as fuel. Yeah, you'd see those are gone at this point.
And rat bones? I guess Joshua
Looks like rat bones
tells
in the
us-
fire. Yeah.
Huh.
Does it
Yes.
look like there's another door that keeps going that direction? with the-
Yes. Same
Okay.
same doors. Yeah. Basically every room, unless I say otherwise, that you go to, same exact room with slight variations.
Okay.
Chaz, may I examine your coat, please? You don't have to take it off. I just like to look at the sleeves. I want to see if there are any. What I'm trying to determine is this: did Noah build this fire? And if he built this fire, maybe there are small burns or something in the coat where
It
things
doesn't
popped.
look like it. Yeah. Yeah, you're kind of thinking that. No, you're not seeing that.
All right. Thank you, Chaz.
Rats, huh? Well, he had rat bites all over his legs. Something had been chewing on him. And it's really cold in here, so I want to go somewhere else. This isn't good. I'm
Well, let's keep going in the same direction. I think Chaz had the right idea initially.
I don't know what an N means. Wait. ESN.
You said N, right?
Yes.
In, yes.
As in Nancy,
Correct.
not M as in Mancy.
Correct.
Correct.
Because that's so
All
clear. When we get to the other room, I have an idea.
Okay.
Something maybe.
So everyone's scampering across to the east again, it sounds like.
Joshua doesn't scamper.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
He strolls.
Yeah. When it's
confidently.
that cold too, yeah, you don't scamper. You just kind of huddle and you
shuffle.
you
Yeah.
do as good as you can. Yeah.
Oh, he's cold. He's just not letting it show. Well, he's trying not to let it show.
When you get into that next room, you look around. There is nothing in the center of the room, but you take a second and you kind of look over. There's a little crushed spider behind a painting, and there's some scrape marks on the floor.
Is the bench leaning up against the wall?
Bench is gone.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
the
right. we
bench
threw
is
the
not in
bench.
this room.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right. We threw the bench.
Got yeeted into
believe
the
we are.
fountain room.
I believe that we are back where we started.
Back to the team. Has there been any significant gain or loss of time? I'm going to look at the timer in the watch.
It looks like you have just been walking room to room. Yeah, you're not
Alright.
you're not finding any big difference.
Huh. So I'm wondering if this is the center or the constant, the T, the constant, and the other letters that we found were E, S, and N, which correspond to cardinal directions.
I have to
We didn't
ask,
find any.
where'd-
We didn't.
We did
I
not
was
We
gonna
find
don't.
any.
Yeah, we don't know what was in that room.
Oh, that's right. We were assuming it was an E. We just assumed that it was an E.
But now we're like, yeah.
What if it was an E, then we would have found an S and an E if it was an E, and an N. What if those correspond to cardinal directions that were supposed to go in each room?
What
Yes.
direction is T?
T is the constant. T is the center.
Ah,
Tup.
For
I think
Toke.
I think it might be time to try going up or down.
Perhaps. We also have doors to the north, south, and west that we have not explored. If we were to start in a room and then follow the cardinal directions of whatever letter we find, if we find cardinal direction letters in the rooms.
If we go west, we're just gonna go backwards the way we just came. It was a circle.
But it would be interesting to see the letters in the rooms to the west, though.
It-
To see if, just to test our theories.
to make sure that they are in fact the same rooms we just came from.
Mm-hmm.
I'll
Yes.
wait here.
And Joshua will take out his pocket knife and cut one of the paintings, one of the not so
Okay.
prettier paintings.
Oh, I'll be right here, waiting for you.
Still
I believe
don't
I
know.
will
Okay.
stay as well.
All right. So Joshua's making. So just heading west.
I'll go with. 'Cause
Alright.
It's my idea.
Yep, I'm letting you go. So I'm gonna
Okay.
follow you.
Right. First you go right back. You find yourself in the cold room that you maybe I don't know if you hustle through it. Then you're
Oh.
back into the room with the jacketless corpse. Then back to the fountain, and lastly, the two that remained in the room see you enter from the east from their side, I suppose, because you kept heading west. So you, Pac-Man rules. You pop in the other side.
That
Passed
wasn't
my
exactly what
same.
I wanted to do. That wasn't exactly what I wanted to do, but okay.
Oh, okay.
Well, but at least we know.
But at least that proves a theory that they thought we'd just come back into this room from that direction. Okay, so that proves that. But
And
That-
there's no going north or south, just the stairs, right?
no, there's
No, you can go north or south. Yeah,
that's what I'm
north
saying.
or
There's
south,
a
and then
there's a door
spiral
on
staircase
every
up,
direction.
down. Yep.
That's right.
And that's why I was saying if we go into the room with the S and we go south instead of continuing east. And then the whatever room we're in, if it gives us a cardinal direction corresponding letter, we follow that letter.
Sure.
That's just my theory. Instead of
Let's do
walking
it.
in a straight line.
Let's do it.
I mean, I'm
All
willing
right.
to try it.
We might find an arrow that points up or down in one of these rooms.
So from the tea room,
Or the
what
gift
direction are you going? I'm
Um,
curious. Yeah.
Well,
What
we
if this is
knew
gift
that
shop room? I like it.
the room to the east gave us an S. We know that room and we know what that room looks like. It's a constant in our minds. We know that it runs east and west. Let's start there and go south. If it doesn't, if the first room doesn't correspond with the cardinal direction, we can always just come right back here and go a different direction if we want.
Just I need to clarify something. When Thornburn and I went to the west, I know they looked the same, but were they the same rooms? Like, was the
Yeah.
corpse's wallet out
Yep.
and stuff like?
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
It's just as you left it.
We go to the east
And then go south.
and then go south. Yes.
East one, south one.
Everyone following along?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You go to the fountain room, which you know is an S, and you go south. As you exit south, you find yourself these other rooms, they've all been kind of lit with that same kind of dim lighting like galleries have. In this one, the lights are out. And as you walk into the room, you feel plant life, the very distinctive kind of pull of something growing on the floor as you walk into it.
Flashlight.
You click it on, and you can see this entire gallery here, as you sweep across it, is overrun with weeds growing up through the floor. The walls, additionally, are cracked to a degree that makes you concerned for the structural integrity of the room. The paintings are all gnawed away, and you can see some of them are like barely still hanging on their wire. You can just see the wood there. Others are crashed against the floor. Everyone that's in there, go ahead and roll alertness.
Pass.
So Zoom just went
Oh, one.
dirt for some reason on the stream.
Oh.
So
Oh, I got a 100.
That's all right. Chaz got you covered.
Guys,
that's a
takes
fail.
that.
Damn.
It gets that clarity toke. I understand everything.
What happened? I just lost
Are you-
everybody's camera except for Nathan's. We're all lost. We're all
The
invisible
stream
agents
is
now.
now just Nathan.
It's just Nathan streaming.
Welcome to Nathan's Power Hour.
Keep going. I'll figure. I failed my sand, by the way.
All right.
Yes.
It's
Watch
actually
as Nathan
just an
handles
alertness.
himself.
It's just one.
No.
You said.
Wrong. He's an expert at this. Really has a lot of experience in it. It's strange.
If there anyone can pull it
Chaz.
off, I believe you can do it, Nathan.
Yeah.
You can handle and play the game at the same time, and I bet you could win.
We'll have to talk
Without
about
cheating.
that later. There
Without
are
cheating.
games like that. But what Chaz hears is he hears a little bit of scratching and a little bit of a chitter noise scampering off into the weeds. Look, you might have to kind of push through the weeds a little bit.
All right. I guess I'll point at Josh and be like, "You light the way, man.
Sure.
All I got's my bic."
There's a rat on your shoulder now.
I give him a hit.
Hey, that's
I
Kenny.
have to make. I have to.
Now he's my
maintain clarity.
friend. Now
Oh,
I meant the
you're
rat.
smoking the rat out. Okay.
Yeah. He's my friend now.
All right.
Let's see if we can find a letter in here. Is there a bench in here?
As I'm
Pieces.
walking in the
Is
middle.
there like a stone bench or anything in here?
Yeah.
Yeah. Chaz, you're walking towards the middle, it sounds like.
Yeah.
And I'm shining the light too. so-
Okay. All right. Then I will say you are able to not step onto the small rat skeleton that you find. And you can pretty easily, you're about to, you take your foot back and you see this skeletal rat kind of laying like this, like it had died on its back. And as you push some of the weeds aside, you realize that there are rat skeletons in a circle around a circular collection of rat bones that has been placed into the middle of the room, with very fine like handling of the bones. It's pretty much a work of art, but something that could not have been made easily by human hands, not with the way it is. Go ahead and roll sanity.
That's a crit fail.
You're lucky it's only a 1. But yes, you have the distinct impression that they left an O.
Yeah.
In
I
this
want
room.
to share this. Be like, we have a rat. Oh. So
My mic was off for some reason. I think it's because I turned it off. But anyway, do I need to make the sanity check as well? since I was
Yeah,
here?
you're shining the flashlight. Yeah.
Made it.
Nice. No loss then.
42 out of 50. 42 out of 54. All right.
All right.
Nice.
There's spiral stairs northeast, southwest, right?
Correct. Or northwest, southeast, but it doesn't really matter.
Whatever.
Just know that one is up, one is down. That's the key information.
I say we go up, man. I think if we're spelling the word, then going up is gonna put us at the T.
Wait. We went to the S room and then went south, right?
Yes.
Yep.
And I missed everything that happened after that because Zoom broke and I had to fix it. So
There's
except the rats. What
The
was the
rats.
letter?
The weed room.
Yeah, the weed room.
Was there a letter in that pile of rat
Oh.
bones? Oh.
Oh,
I'm tracking them on my paper. So
yeah, I got it too. So I think we go up, and I think it's the T room, man.
Let me examine this
Let's go
layout just
see.
a little more.
that wouldn't be in order.
It would because it's gonna be T.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
It's gonna be T.
You think they're vertically spelled?
It's all just the same. I'm gonna go look up. I'm gonna go up the upstairs.
Well, before I leave this, I want to see if I can make an anthropology to see if there's any significance to the way these bones are laid out or occult, whichever one.
Sure. Yeah. Whichever one's higher.
Anthropology. I guess.
Okay.
What? I don't guess it is. It's 40. Nope.
Nope. Okay. Yeah, it's very odd. You're not quite sure. It's pretty intricate and you can't quite make out what you want out of it. Other two, anything you want to do in this room? Agent Corwin?
No, I'm leaning. I think I'm picking up what Chaz is laying down. Either that or I'm getting contact high. One or the other. So
You can get
I'm gonna
regular
kind of
high.
agree with him. Maybe
You can get
So-
regular high with me too.
So what
Um,
we'll do is, since we're kind of due for a break, why don't we end as Agent Chaz? You walk up the stairs from the room with the O, and as your head peeks up, you see a jacketless corpse resting against the wall, and scattered across the floor is that broken bench.
All right.
This is a break point.
Yeah, that's a good break point, I think.
Okay, cool. Well, we will be right back after these messages from the letters B, E. Anyway, we'll be back, folks. All right, we're back, folks. Chaz has wandered off to find his bong, and the rest of us are going up the ladder. Oh, look, he found it. Oh, look. Nope, he's still searching for it.
He's just wandering room from room, going, where did I sit down? That last
Was that the
Oh,
S room or
it.
the T room that I put that thing down in?
Right.
Did I leave it? Oh, I left it with the spider. There,
Oh,
he's just
yeah,
holding on to it. Okay.
So when we come back, I have something. When we come back to that room with the spider in it, I have something for Chaz. I have something to do for Chaz. But we're back. Thanks for hanging out and sticking with us during the break as we refilled our snacks and refilled our gonzo machine so we could be a little more cuckoo for y'all.
All right.
We were just talking about how Jimmy Carter believes in UFOs during the break. So there you go.
And so should you. Anyways, so the group, three of you are still currently in this weed-filled room, not the good kind of weed, and
There's two
rat
weeds in
bones.
it.
Yep, that contained the letter O. Chaz walked up the stairs and saw that he entered the room with the completely demolished, shattered bench and the dead body. What you doing, Chaz, with this new information?
I'm gonna call down and tell him that I'm gonna be like, this is old Noah Moss's. Oh, I'm sorry, hold on. Bruh. All right, I'm there. I got it. Calls back down. He's like, hey yo, it's the room with the body. That's that should have been T. What's down? What's the downstairs?
Yeah, if I guess right, I have an idea. I'm gonna go and walk down the set of stairs on the opposite end of the room.
Well, is
right.
it the body that we've taken the wallet from?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, it's the only body.
Walking down the stairs from the room with the rat bones and the broken walls, you find yourself back where you started, in the tea room. It's not like TEA, it's the one that had the bench with the
Yep.
tea on it.
Got it.
Gosh, you got me all excited. I thought there was some Earl Grey in here.
Yeah, sorry.
Well,
I say.
Is the painting slashed?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
all right. Well, this is the start point. This is our constant room. So down. When I go down the stairs into that room, am I coming down the stairwell in that room, or am I going up the stairwell in that room?
You are coming down from the weed room
Weed room.
down the stairwell to.
So my direction of travel doesn't change.
It's weird because you went down the like the more southern
Mhm.
stairs is what you went down, but you arrived on the northern side.
Got you.
Yeah, because if you went up, it's to the north, down is to the south, and you see they kind of link that way.
Well, I'm still in the O room. I would like to. I'd like to go south just to see what's in that next room south. And this will be the one with the explosive trap, probably.
Well, absolutely. If by that you mean you walk there and you see the shattered remains of the fire, and you start to get very cold very quickly, you realize this is the freezing room.
All right, I'll leave that room. Oh. I'll keep going to see if I end up back in the tea room from there.
Which direction are you
South.
headed? South.
Mhm.
All right.
Well, from the freezing room to the tea room was east.
Correct. Yes.
But yeah, okay. You're going
Yes.
south. Gotcha.
So, Agent Corwin, the other three have split up from you. What are you doing?
Oh, I'm still standing on the
Okay.
stairwell. You can still see me.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
Okay.
Well,
Well-
if
Joshua has disappeared at this point.
yeah. Okay, so Are y'all on the same stairwell, or I think you went to the other side?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna look down the stairwell from where Chaz is.
It only
So-
goes up.
Oh, it
That
only
stairwell
goes up.
Only goes up.
Okay,
Right. Yep.
so that one only goes up, and the other one only goes down.
Right.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. For some reason, I thought it was like okay.
Yeah, it's basically you have 6 directions you can leave. Cardinal directions, then up or down.
Okay. Well, if I'm in the tea room, I'm gonna go. We looked south from the tea room last
you are
time.
in the O room at the moment.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, you're in the O room.
Go
Agent
west.
Tharp is looking down to T.
Okay,
Agent Chaz
okay.
is looking up towards the broken room with the corpse. And you're not sure. You saw where Agent Joshua went. He went south.
Now, when I went east from the cold room, did I end up back in the tea room?
Yeah, in fact, you can
Okay.
see Agent Tharp poking their head down the stairs.
You went east from the cold room
And came back to tea.
and came back to tea.
From the O room, I went south and ended up in the cold room. Then from the
Correct.
cold room, like we did before, I went east and ended up back into the tea room.
Yes.
Right.
Well,
So we haven't found a B, we haven't found an E, and we haven't found a W, correct? Those are the
Right.
3 letters of the word bestow, if that's what we're looking for.
Right.
And we might be looking for the wrong damn word, and we're going to waste 4 hours of our lives. But something tells me that this is probably the...
I'm going to go ahead and go upstairs into the broken room.
Agent Corbin, are you staying in O or are you heading to T with the others?
I'm gonna go to T.
Which one are we calling the broken room? That was the fountain room?
The one with the body.
Yep.
Okay, body.
Yeah.
Okay.
The broken bench and the corpse of Mr. Moss.
It's between the
Yeah.
fountain room and the
And
freezing
cold
room.
Yeah. I called it the body room.
Yeah, so did I.
I thought you called it the broken.
So I came down. I want to, if everybody else is pretty much coming in here, I'll come down the rest of the stairs in the tea room, and I want to go cross corner. We haven't gone up those stairs yet. In the tea room,
Just so you're clear, you came down the stairs from O.
correct.
So you're going to go
That is
down
the
the stairs.
up way. Yeah, you'd have to go down.
Okay,
again.
that's what I
Yep.
was. That's what I was trying to
Yeah.
decide earlier. Okay,
Yeah.
Right.
that's okay. So I want to go down from the tea room.
Okay. That sounds good. Agent Joshua, are you heading that way as well, or are you headed somewhere else? And Corwin, too. You are all in the tea room, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
I still don't want to get too separated.
You can see that Agent Tharp is deep in thought. She is perplexed by this puzzle, and her friendly demeanor is kind of put to the side as she is almost determined now to figure this out. She just puts her head down and she's got her lawyer face on, and she is going for it.
How about we go north from the tea room? See where that's going to bring us.
Yes. Let's go that direction.
Okay. So I have Tharp, you're going down.
Yeah, I just want to go down far enough like
Okay.
to pass the threshold, see what's there.
All right. We will do it then. So Tharp is going down from T. Corwin and Joshua are going north from T. And in the broken room, Chaz, where are you headed?
South.
South. Okay. Fantastic. All right. We will start with Agent Tharp. You push your head, you kind of walk down the stairs a little bit and you kind of peek down. And in this room, again, it looks very similar to the one above, by which I mean an exact duplicate. You do see there is a bench in the middle of this room with the faint lights pointed, but instead of paintings, you see there are curtains hanging on the 8 positions where the paintings would be in the original room.
As if
Can you do?
for an
Yeah,
unveiling kind of thing.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah. Do an alertness check.
Oh, this is gonna go swimmingly.
Yeah.
I have a whole 20 in alertness.
And you went
Great.
down from the tea room?
Yes.
Okay.
No dice.
No dice. Yeah.
Okay.
Fail.
Yeah. Then that is what you see. Is you see a room just like the tea, with curtains.
I'll call back kind of up. Hey, I got another bench in here. I'm gonna go check it out. And
Okay.
wait for a second to see if I hear a response, and then head on the rest of the way into the room.
If I hear Thorpe, I'll respond with an affirmative.
Okay. And you're actually walking north as this happens, and Chaz, you walk up the stairs at about the same time as you see Corwin and Joshua walk into the same room. And this room has a bench in the middle of it. And at first you're thinking, oh, that's what's odd about this room. And then you see in the pictures, they're not landscapes anymore. In fact, you see on each wall, there are 2 pictures devoted to each of you. You stand there with your family, with your bonds, in unfamiliar clothing. It seems very very rustic, almost monk-like, you'd say. And you are in the middle of this burning city. You can see riots happening in the background as it's burning around you. And you in this center appear calm, just relaxed, almost kind of a shoulder over your ex-wife, Agent Joshua. It's I know less about the other bonds, but for each of you, you see husbands, wives, children, perhaps, all around. All 3 of you, go ahead and take a sand check.
Fail.
Roll a d4 on a failure, a 1 on a pass. Agent Tharp, you're not there, so you're feeling great.
Until whatever I was
1.
supposed to see jumps out and eats me.
You're fine.
Because Aaron always tries to kill my character.
You're
If
fine.
my character dies, it's Chaz's fault.
That's true.
Was there a law?
That's his canon, yeah.
I am actively trying to kill Tharp.
Yes. That's
What
canon.
did you say? There was no loss on a pass?
A 1 loss on a pass.
Okay.
Yep. It is still pretty unnerving to see this. But there is a bench in the middle of this room as well.
It's time to check out the bench.
Okay. Easy to do. You can.
What direction were they coming from?
Went
Went
north from
north.
T.
Okay, so y'all entered the room from the south. Okay.
You get down, maybe you even push the bench up a little bit. You can see there is a large E, is an elephant. In
I
this room.
found the E, everyone.
Okay, so then we should be able to go down those stairs, and he's going to point. Oh, hold on. Sorry, that's not Chaz. That's not Chaz. Brah, sick. Those stairs should lead down to the fountain room. And he's going to go to the stairs that lead down to the fountain room.
Okay. Yeah, you walk down the stairs, and lo and behold, you are in the fountain room.
From the room with the family portraits.
Yes, correct. Yep.
It looks like this.
Can I see? Yeah, that is exactly the picture I have.
Yeah, you're doing a much better job of this mapping than I am.
Like I said, I'll send you the picture once we're done, so you could share it with the stream.
Yeah, definitely. We'll share it
Okay,
in the
so-
Discord. That way, give something to our
Yeah.
Discord followers. Some insight.
There you go.
Right on. All right, so that goes there. And so I'm gonna hit the bottom and clickety clackety across. I'll glance over it.
Mhm.
These are like heavy curtains that would like cover up paintings.
Well, actually, I mean, if you were going to cover a painting, you don't need a heavy curtain. In fact, that's starting to kind of bug you. Is these are heavy curtains. You wouldn't need this degree there. And as you're walking by one of them, you see it billows out a little and then falls back. And you hear a distant sound.
Is it like it
Like a
caught a
shout?
breeze through a window, kind of billows up
Yeah.
and back down?
Yeah.
Well, that's definitely going to get my attention. But I'm going to keep my eye on it and keep strolling towards the bench because mission first, the benches have so far given us letters. Whatever's been in the center of the room has given us letters. So I'll keep my eye on that and go after the bench.
Okay. Yeah. You probably don't tip it up as easily as Agent Corwin could.
If I have to, I'll lay down on my
yeah.
back and
Yeah, you probably have to do that, and you kind of scooch under there, and you see there is a letter C. Painted
as in
onto
cookie,
it.
like C is for cookie.
C is in cookie, which
'Cause
is
that's good
cookie
enough
is
for
for
me.
me. Yeah.
Okay. All right. As in Agent Gran. Cookies.
Agent Grant appears.
What a cookie?
Hello.
Hello, would you like a cookie? All right. Having seen that, this doesn't make sense. The C is out of place in the word. Make a note of it. I'll walk over to the curtain that kind of billowed and draw it back. Curiosity. Now that I've completed the mission part, I'm curiosity now.
You pull back this curtain, and as you pull it away from both sides, you see that, like you had somewhat suspected, there is no painting. There is a window that is slightly open, and out the window you can see the city that you saw in the landscapes moving and flickering in torchlight as you see crowds below rioting and attacking each other, and the sky looks wrong. The buildings look wrong. It does not feel like Earth. Go ahead and make a sanity check.
Yeah, that checked out. Wow, I'm perfectly fine. Yep, exactly what I expected to see. 21.
That's good. It's a 1. You
That's
don't
okay.
want to fail that one, apparently, as you realize this view you're looking is not an earthly view.
Yep. That checks out. Not where I thought we were, but where I thought we should be. So, I will. You know what? I'm gonna walk across the gallery opening.
Okay.
And kind of pull one of the other curtains back and just see if it's the exact same scene or if it's like I'm looking out over another. Part
You're
of the
looking
city.
out a different window. Yep.
Okay. That's just wanted to confirm that. Okay. Then you know what? Nope. I'm noping out of here and going back to the party.
Okay. It is odd as you kind of look at these two, is wherever you are, it is up as well. You think maybe you're high up on a tower in this world. It's
Are there
strange.
buildings that have tall towers around there that I can see?
Yeah, there are quite a few of these kind of strange building designs throughout.
Like a la the Jetsons or something just completely foreign?
No, more they almost look like normal kind of skyscrapers, but they do have some of that Aztecian Mesoamerican feel to them. But you also see some like almost medieval turrets as well. It's a very strange combination.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell I'm looking at, so I'm going to walk away.
On from
Smart.
Delta Green to Rifts.
Right. Yeah, and I'm gonna head back to where I last saw the group going. So back to the tea room.
Okay. Yep. You can pretty easily. You saw them heading north, so if you follow them, you can rejoin with them in the room where I believe you found an
E.
E. Very good.
Okay, so one room to the east. Of the E room. That's where Chaz is going.
Okay. You walk to the east of E, and you find yourself in the rat room, for lack of a better word, the dark room that
The
is
weeds.
filled with
The weed room.
vegetation. Yep, the weed room.
All right. Okay, so go back and look up the stairs from E.
You'd have to actually go up it, but walk. You find yourself in the frozen room from the upstairs of E.
Okay, so and that room had an N on the floor, right?
Correct. Yep.
As in Nancy.
Correct. It is not an upside down W. I would not do that to you. Although I think it's a great idea.
Thanks,
I think Billy
Diamond.
suggested that. Or Diamond. Yeah.
That's
good
why.
idea.
Yeah,
I like it.
That's why I had to double check. As soon as you
Yep.
said it, I was like, "This motherfucker."
Nope. It is 100% for sure and in.
It's not like frosted over because it's a marble floor and super
No.
cold. All right, just
No.
making sure.
I mean, there's some ash in it, but
Oh,
Okay.
meta. I think I just figured out the word. I'd like to solve the puzzle, Pat.
Well, I mean, you wouldn't actually be meta. I mean, you are.
No, I
playing
know.
the game.
Once we're all back in the same room, I'd like to.
yeah, you I believe are all in.
Yeah, you would catch up to us.
Yeah,
Yeah, you would
right.
catch up to us.
Yeah, they're not
Immediately.
that far apart.
I found a C. And the only word that I can think of off the top of my head has all of these letters. Be connects. Or connect, the singular. CONNECT. We double the letters. There's the question mark letter that I'm not sure what it could be, but
That's a B.
did we establish that was B?
No, it has to be B.
Well, there's no C in the word bestow, so I don't.
Yeah,
think
there's
we're
no
looking-
N either.
But there is an N in bestown, the past tense of the verb.
I also bestow every once in a while.
Yes, Chaz, we know that you are bestowed right now.
I'm not sure we've exhausted all our options though. What's north from the E room?
The room
N.
that's the room we're talking about. The B. The room with the body.
That's east
Which
of
starts
the
with B.
in room, or west of the in room,
Like
Correct.
north from the
of
N?
the E room.
and
North
north,
of
of
the
the
room?
E room. Correct.
North from E. Hold on.
Yeah, that's kind of what I got.
And I've almost got the word spelled moving from room to room.
Nice.
I need to find the W.
Right.
I imagine it'll be underneath the mission accomplished banner.
So I will tell everybody about the windows that I saw also.
Yeah.
Share
Ah,
that.
fuck.
Just
would you
hearing
share
about
that?
it.
Why
Just
would you
hearing
share
about
that?
it is not enough to
You know.
do the sanity roll. But
Look, it was really weird.
by the way, guys,
it's been the
this is
only room
nuts.
that hasn't had paintings, though. It's the only thing that's changed in the environment, and I think that's an important thing to note in our. It may be the way out.
What is west of the E room?
Oh, the bone room.
Wait, hold up.
No, that's
You
east of
said
the E
west
room.
of the E
Yes.
room, right?
I don't think we've gone that way yet.
No.
We came into the E room from the O room.
I came to
Which
the E room from the
was-
T room.
Right. So if you went north from T, you got to E. If you
Yeah.
went west
from
from
O.
O,
You got to E.
Yep.
But if you go west from E, we haven't been there yet.
Oh,
Correct?
Yeah, swim one.
Okay. yeah, you're right. I just
and so Joshua, are you heading west? It sounds like
Yes.
you head.
I mean, I'm not being sneaky about it.
Yeah. No, I'm not anticipating you are. As you walk
roll
through the
stealth.
western archway, and you find yourself in the curtained room that Agent Tharp had informed you about.
Wait a minute. So that would be E, which makes that O. If that's O. What was north of O? The question mark room.
the N. Wasn't it N? Was north of O?
North of O. I don't know if you
I
went
don't
that
think
way,
we went
but if
that
you
way.
check that, you can check it out pretty quick. You find the fountain room.
This isn't making any sense all of a sudden. This is not mapping the
you-
way it's.
Moving shit around on me now. You're just lying to me.
No, north from O is the fountain, is the S room.
Yes, correct. Yep.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
God,
Hold on.
this is
Hold
like
on.
a video
North.
game. I
Hold
play
on.
every
You said
sleep.
north of O was the S room.
What was it?
Right.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. And then to the east of O was E.
You have not been east of O.
No, we have not.
South of O went to the cold room, so no, we
Correct.
didn't go
Yep.
east.
Okay. So yeah, then that's where we'll have to go.
Yeah, we need to go east of the O room next.
All right. So this, as you go east, you find yourself, and this room's different, as you might expect. You have not been in here before. The lights are turned away from the paintings in this room, and they center on a statue of a robed figure posed in the middle of the room, and it's got its hand up and it's kind of crouched over. It's bigger than a person, so you think if you like, you could walk over and like it would be whispering to you. But you still see the paintings there, but they're in the dark.
I think I'm gonna go and put my head up to this thing and see if it whispers anything to me.
All right.
right.
So Agent Corwin, who's your closest bond?
We'll say my daughter.
Okay, perfect. You hear your daughter talking to you, and go ahead and you're kind of transfixed there as you hear her start to speak, and the things she's saying, your mind is recoiling against it. It is actively struggling against the secrets that she is whispering to you. Go ahead and make a sanity check.
That's a pass.
All right, take 1 from there, gain a 1% in unnatural, and lower your that bond with your daughter by 1. As she is whispering things that are horrible to hear, and frankly, like with you passing the sanity, you are actively suppressing them, and you're wondering if you'll ever be able to kind of separate those two. You know, the next time you hear your daughter calling you, are you going to be thinking of the statue? And you pull away, and you feel deep in your core that this is W. This room is the W.
This is the W room. I don't recommend listening to the statue, however.
I won't. All right, we didn't go west from the O room, did we?
Mm-hmm. West from the O room
yes,
is
you
E.
did. Yep.
Oh, okay. All right, I'm looking at the whole.
There's
thing. All right.
a
I got you.
pattern we have to follow.
Yeah.
Chaz is deep in thought, a cloud of smoke around him as he's thinking.
That means the question mark room, the body is
Is B.
possibly B. That's the only logical conclusion I can come to.
Yeah.
Now that we have process of elimination. But where does the C fit in? And the N? Well, we've said the N can be Bestow, but what about the C? Maybe it's a play on the word see. See, like see this. I don't know. It's weird.
You know what? I got some stuff at my place that will help us figure that out. But we need to get there first.
Yes. So I think we need to start in the room with the body,
Yes.
and then head
From the B to the E.
to the E, and then
And that's-
STOW.
All right.
Hold on.
Yep.
So we need to decide how we're going to enter the room with the body. From what direction?
If my map is the same as y'all's, that should be south of here. Is that what you guys have?
Well, I don't know. Is what's north of the W?
It's upstairs from the O.
It's upstairs from the O, but we are east of the O.
Yeah, but it's just one room, and we can go
If we're
upstairs.
east of the O, then it should
Are
be
there
south of us.
stairs? Are there stairs in this room?
Yeah. Yes, there is.
I want to go and check those out. Does one
Okay.
of them lead to the body room? Perhaps the
Uh,
one's going down.
Well, so you're going down first?
I'm going to look at the downstairs. The one's
All right.
going down. Yeah.
Yep. You go down from W and you see the remnants of the fire of the inn room.
Okay. Then we'll.
Mhm. That makes sense on my map.
Okay. So if we do that, then we can go from N. We should be able to just go west, and we'll be at B.
Yes.
Did we go
According
up
to my
from
map.
the T room?
Yeah. That's where we had the up was the E. So we need to go.
No. I'm talking about
no.
upstairs
Yeah.
from the T room.
Yeah, we did. It is below O.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. T O. So it's body room, downstairs, upstairs. No, body room,
body room.
downstairs, north, west, upstairs, east.
Yes.
Is
I
that
think that's what
is
it
that
was.
what you have? Because that's what I think I have.
Yeah, I think that's what
Yeah.
I have.
Yeah, B downstairs, then northwest,
Yeah. So it's
north, then east.
B E.
All
Yeah.
right. So I think you guys you said you're starting in B. Right?
Yes.
Yes.
Ooh. Nope. I got All right. I am going to have you run me through. So you're starting with B as a group,
Yes.
heading to
Downstairs should be E.
if you head down
South.
from
South.
B,
South.
Okay,
Yes,
yes, if
south.
you head south, you
Sorry.
hit E.
South.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep, south to E.
And then go downstairs from E to S.
Got it?
Go west to T.
Yep.
Upstairs should be O.
Got it.
And,
And
then,
then east should be W.
The W.
As you walk the steps of Bestow, you exit W, you see the robed figure, and this time you see the southern archway looks different. Prior, when you had entered the room, it had always been that haze. Now it opens, but it doesn't open to the reception area.
Of course not.
Outside, you see cobbled streets and bodies lying in bits of blood, wearing robes, much like you saw in the paintings. And those that haven't made the check, go ahead and make a sanity check as you kind of look out and you can see the buildings, the city, the fires, and you realize you are not on Earth.
I'm okay with that.
Okay, just one then.
I, however, am not okay with that.
Okay, roll a d8.
Ooh.
Yeah, this one's a doozy, apparently.
Yeah.
Really insults your Midwestern
All right,
sensibilities.
it's.
Oh, hey now.
I'll
This
take
place
that
is no
4.
good. Okay,
I'll take the
yeah.
4.
That's
Hey
not
now.
enough for a temporary
Yeah,
insanity.
if it was
so yeah,
if it
it's
was a
great.
5, I would have pushed it off. But that's okay.
Hey.
All right, I failed.
All right,
Do it-
roll a
the
d8.
D8.
Yes.
Oh boy, here it comes.
Oh boy, big numbers. Here we go.
No whammies, no whammies.
7.
Oh,
that's
ow,
not
that's
so good.
Yeah, you might want to push that on a bond.
That makes sense. Would you like to push that off onto a bond so you do not incur a temporary insanity?
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully, yes.
Because you
I'll
still
have to go
could.
with. Do I want it or do I want the insanity?
I know, isn't that the
Sometimes going temporarily insane can be fun.
So I've kind of grown fond of Joshua. I know sooner or later he's going to go, but let me.
that's Delta Green. Sooner or later you're gonna go, but you're
Yeah.
trying to last as long as you can.
Let's go ahead and finish off that relationship with the ex-wife.
Ooh. Oh. If you
It's
finish
roll.
that off, I will
No, I got
warn
one
you.
left. I got one left.
Okay, then you're good.
He's got a roll.
Yeah, roll that D4, I suppose, and we'll see how
Yeah.
much that
See
Ah,
how
I
much
see.
comes off.
Wait
Yep.
a minute. So it's
Right.
not the you
Yep,
don't subtract.
correct. You don't
Okay.
subtract 7, you subtract whatever the D4 rolls.
Yeah.
So you want a 3 or a 4 if you don't want to go temporarily insane.
Mm-hmm.
I got a 2.
Ouch.
Well,
No, wait.
lose
I had
2.
it. I had an 8 in the ex-wife. I took off
Yeah,
the 7
so
because I thought.
Take
okay.
take off 2 from the 8 for her.
All right.
Take off 2 willpower, and then
Hell,
yeah.
I should have went with the temporary.
All right, you have 3 possible responses. Oh, you still get the temporary because you
Fight,
have 5 laws. Yeah.
freeze.
Yep.
Yeah.
Fight, flight, or freeze.
All right, let me just make sure I'm getting these numbers right. Take 1 away from my sanity or leave sanity alone.
Take 5 away from your sanity.
Is that?
Because it's you push 2 of your sanity
Yeah.
loss onto the bond, you take the rest.
Yeah.
Correct. Yep. And then 2 from the willpower as
And
well
2 from
because
the
it's
willpower.
mentally exhausting to do this.
So because you took 5 or more, you still take
Yeah.
temporary insanity.
Wait, I don't know
Yep.
what's going on with my character sheet. It's turned everything small, but okay.
No,
I'm gonna have
that's
small
your temporary
numbers.
insanity.
Yeah. You have tinyism for a short amount of time.
No, I practically it's so small I practically can't even read it. But okay, 2 from willpower.
Joshua starts talking like Mickey Mouse over here.
I can't read my numbers, damn it.
While you're doing that, I guess we
Okay,
can update that in a bit. What? Yeah, fight, flight, or freeze. How does Agent Joshua? Is this this understanding that he is no longer on Earth? How does that overwhelm him?
well, there isn't really a threat, right?
Not really. You don't see any knife wielding people, although you suspect they're not far away.
Sometimes it just feels good to punch somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ask Agent Updraft. Do you ever meet him?
I think he's just going to freeze.
Okay, yeah. So the other three, I
Well,
mean,
what is freeze?
So here's how
Yep.
it works: is you're going to
Petrified.
assign them. You're going to assign them in order: fight, flight, or freeze. So
Oh,
you
okay.
will either choose freeze, fight, flight, or freeze, flight, fight. Then you'll roll a d6. On a 1, 2, or 3, you are freeze. 4, 5, you are whatever the other one, the next one is, and on a 6, you're the third.
So I'm going freeze, flight,
we'll do that.
fright. Freeze,
Okay.
flight, fright, and I roll a 4.
all right.
Flight.
So
Like,
flight. All right. So you think you feel yourself shutting down, but then you know you have to get away from here. You
Oh, I'm
absolutely
feeling it.
must. Yeah. What does Agent
Yeah,
Joshua
this is-
do?
I'm okay chasing these alien things down on Earth, but I'm not okay with not being on Earth because now I'm the alien thing. Is there a way to get back to the?
There
The
are
O
the
room?
other. Yeah. There's the other 3 doors out of here. Which one do you run to?
All right, we are currently in the new W room, right?
Yep. In fact, you could. Yeah. Which way you're headed? The way south is currently out into the city, so probably not that.
Yeah, back into the O room.
All right. Yeah, you just flee. You hear kind of the footsteps of Joshua just getting into that O room. What do the rest of you do?
Josh, where are you going? It's not a time. No, we have to get through this together. We can't do this alone.
Where are we?
Trying to figure out why my number is so small.
Oh my goodness.
You could look at that later when you're in private.
This isn't Earth. Where are we? What is going on here?
This is what I was telling you guys I saw when I looked out the window.
Chaz is going to try and tackle Josh when Josh starts to take off.
Oh, he's had
And
plenty of time
it-
chasing meth heads running out of the clinic, right?
Yeah, so that will be this will be a contested roll just
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it's a temporary insanity. But yeah,
Yep,
let's
yep,
do
yeah.
a dex
So-
or athletics versus.
All right, so we'll do a dex versus
Dex.
because
Okay.
it's tackling.
Yeah. Joshua, you
Um,
want to roll a dex?
Yeah, so with a nimbleness that you did not see coming, soon as Agent Joshua takes off, Chaz almost instinctively kind of drops his shoulder and peels back like a running back dodging a tackle, and then lunges forward to try and grab Joshua basically around the middle of his body and bring him to the ground. Because
Dexterity happens
that's
to
about
be
to be
one of
big.
my distinguishing features.
Mine too.
75.
All right. See how we
34.
do.
I got 34. I don't-
55, a critical success on Chaz's part. He manages to restrain you before you run into in fact, then you feel that urge to get back, and then you feel Chaz just get you. Is Chaz gentle? How's Chaz about this?
Yeah, I mean,
Got a crit.
he's a nurse. He deals with a lot of junkies that, tweak out, and it's not their fault. And he's kind of a compassionate human. And so he does kind of juke around and he wraps up around you. But when he does, he doesn't like throw you to the ground. He just kind of pulls you back and just is like, be cool, man. It's all right. It's all right. Be cool, dude. Just be cool. And like, he's like, breathe with me, man. Just.
Nice.
How fast do contacts high hit? Just curious.
Oh,
This is
never.
only a couple minutes.
I've tried. You
Right.
gotta hit it like pretty hard.
Yeah.
You get a shotgun in one.
Yeah, right. Yeah, like I'll try and shotgun him or something. No, I'm not gonna try and shotgun him.
Well, I don't know
It
what
is
the-
his personality. It's just the
So-
personality of Chaz.
So Joshua,
I don't know what
Chaz
the
has got
mechanic
you
of this
wrapped
is.
up in a
do I
tender
s-
embrace. He has succeeded against you. He got a better critical success against your success.
I realize that, but does this somehow stop my need to get the hell out of here?
You still really want to get out of here. Once you're out of this room, you'll be better, but you need to get away from this other place.
Yes, no, just let me go.
It's cool, man. Just chill. Here, I'll go with you, man. Just chill for a second, man. And Chaz, he's restraining. He's not. I mean, he's not the strongest guy in the world. He's just keeping you from moving.
Well, then I guess I have to make a roll to try to get to that. I get to that room.
All right.
It's gonna break out.
Yeah. Do a contested strength roll then.
I have 50.
Or else a contested dex if you're wanting to be slippery about it. But
my last critical was an 88, and this critical is a fucking 88.
I'm afraid you are not moving anywhere as you critically fail. And Chaz somehow, it was like a Tinder hug. Now it's like a vice grip of like this Tinder hug.
Freaking full Nelson.
Petting him on the back. Like,
yeah, it's turned into like a full Nelson. He's like brushing your hair, just like, no, man, it's cool. Just relax, man. It's cool. Just chill.
I gotta go. Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, and like, and Chaz is not strong, so like when you go to fight with him, he just kind of lets you like lift him up, and so he's just kind of like on your back, and then because you're off balance, you kind of shift back, and then he's able to like rock back, and he's like, no, man, it's cool. Just chill. It's all right.
Oh, if I can pick him up, I'm gonna walk. I'm gonna stay until I no longer have the urge to get out of this.
I would say you are kind of teetering in a circle with the critical failure and critical success. I think it's kind of there's a bit of a wobble there, but yes, Agent Corwin and Tharp, you see these two are struggling against each other. What are you two doing?
That's so cute.
Look at them. Mustard on the French fries in this place.
That's cute. But Agent Corwin, we have a bit of a problem.
Yes, we do. Where are we? And how do we get back to where we need to be?
I don't think we're in Kansas anymore.
We weren't in Kansas to start with, but...
Well, you get the reference. This doesn't look historically relevant at all. Just alien, you said.
Yes, very much. Like, they're obviously human here, you think. From the pictures, you think. Beyond that, not sure.
How close are the nearest bodies? Like, you said there were some bodies on the street?
Yeah, if you hop out into the street past the entrance, you would be able to get to one of the bodies. But you wouldn't be able to, like, scoop it from inside the room. You'd have to go outside.
Yeah, I'll kind of look out.
I'll cover you.
And I'll
pull out my pistol. I'll cover you.
With my hand on my weapon, but not drawn. I'm just going to look out and I'll try to be stealthy. I got a little bit of stealth in me. I'll try to be stealthy and slip out to one of the nearest bodies, and I want to kind of look at it, investigate it a little bit.
Yeah, definitely roll a stealth.
That is a... Oh, I trip over my shoelaces, and that's a 92 on a 30. Not very stealthy.
Not critical, which is good.
I kick a rock or something, yeah.
Yes. You do. So, yes, you knock into something, and you get to this body, and you start hearing voices coming around the corner, and you see the flickering of torchlight and angry sounds of a mob heading in your direction. And as you get down to this body, go ahead and roll a alertness check. You're good at this, right?
Oh, yeah. I'm 20 in this. I'm really good at this. The dice hate me tonight, y'all. That's a 56. I haven't critically failed anything. How many times could I mark the checkbox?
Just once. I'm sorry. It'd be nice. Yeah, it would be great if you could do more, but alas, no. You turn this person over. It's a man. You can see he's got some pretty nasty stab wounds to the face. And additionally, he's wearing kind of that hemp robe. It looks actually pretty similar to the ones you saw in the paintings. And he has in his hand, he has a piece of paper, tightly clutched, kind of in that death grip. And you can see as you're standing there, the people are coming around the corner and a couple are starting to break away and run for you. You see they have these very sharp looking knives on them.
I will draw my weapon and fire.
I am also going to fire when I see
All right.
them.
Okay.
I will call it shit incoming, and I'm going to find some different dice to roll because the 3 sets I have rolled tonight have not been kind to me. So
When they
obviously,
fire, when
Pass.
Pass. Okay.
and
Chaz is gonna go with Josh.
he's bailing into.
He's,
oh,
yeah, he's
all right.
bailing. He's like, oh,
Those are bad vibes, man.
That's a fail.
Okay.
Suck. All my dice hate me tonight.
So the good news is the first one, Agent Corwin, you take out. I'm doing it a little bit different since it's such a mob. You take out one of the people that's running towards Agent Tharp, and the other gets a little tripped up. You have a second Agent Tharp. What are you doing?
Is there a sharp steely knife with this person? Do they have a weapon on the ground near them?
Looking around, it does not look like they have a weapon.
I'm gonna run back for cover as my weapon jammed, and I'm trying to clear the jam. I'm gonna run.
Oh dang! Was it a critical?
No, just damn it.
All right.
I'll just say it didn't. Misfired,
Right.
whatever.
Yeah, since you're only running, you got a bit of an opening there. You get back into the room. Agent Chaz and Agent Joshua are gone. It's just kind of the robed figure, the stone figure there in the middle of the room. As you hear the people running down the street towards you. What do you two do?
Is there a way to barricade the door?
I'm
gonna guess no, because there's nothing in this
not
room other than
really.
the statue.
You could put a painting there.
Yeah, it's
but
gonna do a lot.
Right.
Oh,
Should we fall back to our friends? Let's fall back. There's a lot of them. There's only 2 of us. We don't stand a chance.
I agree. Do you know where they went?
I think they went that way. The same way we
All
came
right.
from. It's the only way we know. So
All right.
All right. So you run back into O, and I'm assuming at this point, Joshua, you're beginning to kind of feel safe in this dark, kind of that gross, animal smell of the rat room is hitting you. There's the weeds underfoot. It's kind of nature and relaxing if you don't think about it too hard. As Agent Corwin and Agent Tharp rush into the room after you.
we got incoming
The mob found us.
hostile mob.
I don't know. We've got to figure out.
If we trace our steps backwards and we go backwards,
We can at least get back to the B.
do you think that would take us back to where we came from? In other words, back to Earth.
It's
Well,
logical.
if we're on the W, and then we go backwards, I mean, it's got to put us back to where it was at, right?
Yeah, that seems logical.
We
Chaz
hope.
Chaz is like, let's go. Like,
Yep.
come on, to the O. To the O. Like,
We're
come
in
on.
the O
you-
now.
Well, you're
To
in the
the
O.
O.
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry.
To the
You're in the
O.
O.
So we need to go to the S.
Yep.
I mean to the T, and then
To the T. To the T.
Yep. So you're spelling bestow backwards.
Yeah.
That's what I'm understanding.
Yeah.
Excellent. As you enter B, you see, because let's see, which direction are you actually coming there? You enter from the north of E.
yes.
and you can see now that you get into the room, you see the corpse ahead of you, and you hear a car horn behind you. And as you turn to look at the southern exit, you see the reception area and the street beyond that you originally came in.
Let's get the hell out of here.
Yes. Right.
Oh, Jesus. Let's get out of here.
This is an art gallery?
Museum, sorry. The
Oh,
Coxeter
museum.
Museum. I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
museum.
well, you know
Tip of the
what?
slung.
Exactly.
It's
Burn this
going up.
bitch down. Josh
Yep.
was gonna burn it to the ground.
Chaz
I guess-
and Josh meet up after hours, like unbeknownst to one another. They both show up with gasoline, and we're like, "Bruh."
I'm lighting everything as we leave.
Hitting the paintings as we leave, lighting them on fire.
Yeah.
Nice. In every
Very
room we
good.
go through, Joshua's lighting all the paintings.
Agent Corwin, is there anything you would like to do? Because it sounds like the others are burning the place down.
It's gone.
If they're burning it down, I'm just leaving. I'm just getting out of here. I'm not gonna like up and like run off and leave everybody, but I am leaving the building.
Excellent.
Actually, I think I'm gonna go take a look around outside and see if anybody's gonna see them burning down the building.
Not from, if they're just inside lighting things up, people probably aren't paying that close of attention. But if it starts to catch, yeah, you might want to make tracks.
Yeah. So I'm gonna keep an eye out.
I'm gonna stop at the reception desk, and just check to see if there's a ledger or any sort of guest book or anything like that. I need contacts, resources, cold calls for the business. Trying to grow
As
my
a matter
firm.
of fact,
We'll say there's a computer you could take there that you think might,
Okay.
you might be able to get some stuff off
yeah,
of
I'll
that.
grab the computer because I have 50 in computer science. I can
Yeah,
hack that when I get home. And
yeah.
and I want to make a criminology roll to see the most efficient, effective way to make sure this place burns to the ground from where I'm at.
Please, yeah, go for it.
88.
15.
Oh.
Nice. Yeah.
15 out of
yeah.
50.
Yeah, you think of some pretty clever ways, probably better than I'll come up with. Of maybe there's a animal taxidermy section that's off to the other side. You're like, they've got some good stuff in there. I bet we can make this happen. And you chuck some of it into the gallery, some of it in the rest of the museum, and do with good criminology, you're able to get out before it becomes a known thing.
All right, got to get a T-shirt from the gift shop too.
Okay, yeah, that would have been the real pro move on my part, is have you
Mhm.
literally exit through the gift shop. If I run this again, I'll have to do that.
Yes, yes. That
Of
needs
course
to be
it is.
the truth.
Step outside. Let's put the sunglasses on.
Yep,
And,
and hoof it out.
taxi.
Yes, and we'll resolve it there. Is you let your case officer know that Noah is not going to be the resource you had hoped, but you were able to exit the museum with your sanity intact.
And
Destroy it so stuff
destroy
couldn't
it
follow us
other
through.
people can't
Yes.
Mhm.
lose their sanity.
All right.
Awesome.
Great job. You guys solved that very nicely.
I'm still
The
kind of
only-
about to see in the end.
They don't have anything to do with the passage. To give background to what's happening, since this is a one shot, I'll give you a little bit of here's what happened. Is the museum is actually built and the archways are constructed in such a way that they are a gate spell. It's a modified gate spell. Whoever controls and runs the museum is able to turn this on or off. Noah went through and he had made it to the corpse room, and then some other party turned it off. Time doesn't run the same there. He's stuck in this other dimension. he ended his life. At some point, the guy turned the museum back on. You guys entered it and you were stuck. There's only really 2 exits. You spell bestow, you get out on the other world. You go backwards, you're here. So you can go there and back. The failed rolls for Agent Tharp, Noah had some family on the other side. He had information to say to escape, go backward, spell
Yeah, that's
bestow
probably what
backwards.
was death gripped in his hand. Yeah.
Exactly, sadly.
All right.
But yeah, other than that, just dimensions on dimensions. Let me send y'all the bit. I'll put it on the Discord in a
Cool.
second.
I thought it was really neat that we each like mapped it out on paper in a different way, but we all found the same path. I thought that was really, really cool.
Yeah.
It really reminded me, The Longing. There's a video game I recently played called The Longing. You play it in real time. It takes 400 days. Trying to map that thing out was like almost exactly the same. You played it, Nathan?
I am aware of it.
Yeah.
That was a cool episode. But yes, you have to add the gift shop at the end if you run this again.
Yeah.
But as always, Nathan, a fantastic job handling this motley crew of adventurers / agents as we went through.
Yeah, we're not an easy crew.
No, we're not. Especially when we decide to Scooby-Doo it and split up on you and go 6 different ways, and there's only 4 of us.
You mostly stayed together. It wasn't that bad.
It wasn't that bad. Yeah. But really appreciate you putting this together last minute too. Just throwing this out there. So thanks so much for running as always. Thanks to Jesse for stepping in to play tonight, and great job to Jesse last night running Weird and hosting the stream last night as well. Great job. Weird is in it.
Only minor technical difficulty.
Yeah, it's okay. It happens. It's OBS. Weird's Newsome campaign is running in test play for public view on Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. right here on the United Adventure Company. So make sure you tune in for that. This weekend, we have a mod meeting. So those of us that are in the mod channel, don't forget Saturday at 4:30 in the Discord. We're going to be talking about some big announcements that are upcoming in next month for the channel. So we're going to be announcing some very big news. Stay tuned for that. If you're in our Discord, you'll get that information before the stream. So a little preview to those in our Discord. Thanks to Ninja Bunny 5055 for the follow earlier just before the stream started, and all of the rest of you who follow us and tune in every week. We love you all so very, very much. Early.
Oh, you almost had it.
I jumped it early. Sorry.
Oh well.
That's
Oh,
okay.
luxury.
My stream, my OBS broke, and I went to the wrong slide early. So, oh, sorry about that, folks. I'll try that again. We'll fix it in post. We're the United Adventure Company. Don't forget that.
Oh, you
let's
lost
see.
it
I lost
now.
it. I've lost it now. Because
Truth is deception. Fear leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering.
yes, it's something like that. And innocence, well, that's just a luxury. We're the United Adventure Company. This has been Delta Green Bestow. Thank you for tuning in. Until next time, stay out of our dungeons. Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.